Hello, my name is Janice B. Gordon, and this is Scale Your Sales Podcast. Welcome to Scale Your Sales Podcast, listed number 9 of 43 best podcasts for every sales professional. I am Janice B. Gordon, the customer growth expert, awarded RevTech strategist of 2024. In today's episode of Scale Your Sales Podcast, my guest talks about the challenges of sales leadership, and leadership in general amid rapid technological advancement, and also the role of trust and how that's evolving in sales. She talks about how important training is using AI, but also the process of creating the parameters and the policies to enable people within the organization to really make use of generative AI. AI is especially good at mining customer data. There was lots of use cases and examples that my guest gave, how we could better utilize generative AI in our sales operation. My next guest is an expert in disruptive transformation strategy and leadership, and is a New York Times bestseller, author of 6 books. She is working on her 7th book, Winning with Generative AI. She is a graduate of Harvard College and Harvard Business School, and was named one of the most creative people in business by Fast Company. Welcome to Scale Your Sales Podcast, Charlene Li.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm really looking forward to getting into all things AI with you. You've written so many books, and you're an expert here, so I will bow to your knowledge. So let me first by kind of asking you your deep insights into leadership and digital transformation, and how you see the role evolving around trust in B2B sales, particularly around the rapid advancement of technology.
Well, I've been studying technology and its impact on business and leadership now for over 20 years. And the one thing I've learned is that it's never about the technology. It's always about the people, and it's always about relationships, because that is what leadership is. It's a relationship between people who want to create change and people who follow them and making that change happen. And so with sales, it's particularly hard because you're asking people to change, and as part of their work, change other people's lives and their businesses. And so your whole business is about creating change. Everything that you do is around that. And so technology helps you in that relationship, and being able to harness it, understand it, know what its capabilities are, or know what its limitations are, is a key part of that whole leadership process, in terms, especially in leading sales.
But how does the technology, the AI, how does that reconcile with the important area in sales of building trust? That if you don't have trust, you do not have a sale. But often
Exactly.
technology can get in the way of that. So how do you
Right.
reconcile the two things?
Well, the thing is, we first have to trust the AI to do a good work. And so a lot of my work is, how do we build trust in AI in our organization? And the way I think about it is, you think about what builds trust. It is the fact that I understand your needs, that I, again, over and over again, show up appropriately, with respect and humility. And AI can give you a lot of that background information. So you think about what you need to know about a person in order to understand their business, understand their needs. AI can help you get up to speed and understand that a lot faster, so that you're spending your time focusing on the relationship rather than focusing on these other things. But you have to be able to trust it and use it, and also very transparently expose and disclose when you're using AI in that relationship. It's like, how did you know all these things about me? How did you come up with this great sales proposal? When is it you that's showing up, and when is it AI that's showing up? Do you disclose that? Do you not? How do you use it? That's all part of this new world of using AI in a trustworthy way.
That is really interesting what you just said, in that if a customer says, how do you know? Do you admit to saying, well, it wasn't me, it was the AI that researched you? And I wonder, how would that make the customer feel? I would imagine a salesperson would be reluctant to admit that, because it could make them feel that they were lazy, or the customer feel that so much information is out there. They feel a bit exposed, especially as they thought the information was correct. There's so many different things going on from a psychological point of view, isn't there?
There is. And so therefore, the way that you use it and the way that you disclose it is the actual thing that builds trust. So the use of AI, the use of the technology itself is neutral. It's not good or bad. It's how we use it that exposes how we are using it in a responsible and ethical way. So I'll give you an example. If I'm using AI to do research, it's the same as doing Google to do research, but I'm turbocharging it. Okay. So would I disclose that I did all this research on you? How did you do this? That was so quick. And I go, well, I use these AI tools to search for publicly available information and help me put it together to better understand your business. And I use it as a tool. And I'm going to continue doing that so that I can better serve you. That comes across in a much better way than, wow, AI just kind of like knows everything about you. So about understanding it. It's also things like I use AI to help me write my proposals. I still compose the proposals, but I'm able to craft it in a way, in a language that you can understand. That is the way that you need to hear it be heard, because it just helps me be a better communicator. And I don't think any person is going to say, well, you're being lazy. You're taking care. You're taking and you're putting extra effort to make sure that you're communicating and building these relationships. So I don't think of you can look at AI as a shortcut, as being lazy. Those are all values that we put onto AI. We could also put onto it, you're being diligent, you're being careful, you're being intentional, you're going the extra mile using these tools. Both can be valid. So how you train people, how you use these tools, the way you implement them and train people to use them, and the way you disclose them in your use with your customers and clients makes a big difference.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for that, Charlene. I'd like to kind of explore how you overcome fear in using AI. And there's two levels. There's the salesperson operator, and you've given us some really good ways to communicate it. But also it's the organization and having control over it as well. There's a fear level there in letting AI run riot all over the operation. So how do you reconcile those two things?
Well, I think that there's two types of fears right now. There's fear of missing out, FOMO, and then fear of getting in, bogey. So we're trying to figure out, like, I kind of want to, I'm pulling in two different directions. And I believe that structure, governance, policy, processes that define what is good, what is not good, defines the edges, creates trust in the system and also in the people using it is absolutely essential. It's like you're a Formula One driver. You have a great car with an amazing engine, but the biggest constraint to how fast you can go is how good your brakes are. You want to go fast, but you also need to be able to stop very safely when danger is around the corner. So I do believe in using what I call the AI pyramid of trust. It's sort of like that Maslow hierarchy of needs. And at the very bottom, you want to make sure you have safety, security, and privacy absolutely ensured. There are existing policies in the company. You want to respect those and have those reflected in your AI processes and policies too. Then you want to make sure things are fair. And defining what is fair is in itself an issue. Same thing with quality and accuracy. When do you want deep quality and high accurate quality and accuracy? When is going faster more important? And so we're comfortable having a lower level of quality. Then who's responsible and accountable when things go wrong? And very importantly, transparency. And when you have those things defined in the organization, that allows us to have this governance. I mean, oftentimes think of governance as something that slows us down. I think in this case, it speeds us up. when you have good training around this, what you can do and what can't do. And there's, in the end, just no replacement to good training, like really good training on how to use AI effectively for sales.
So how do organizations implement these policies? What is the best structure? Is this one person on at the executive level that's responsible? Is it something that's shared across the whole department? How would you recommend organizations, because after all, governments are trying to grapple with this as well, aren't they? Let
They
alone
are.
organizations. So what
Well,
would be,
again,
as being the expert here, your advice to manage this, the boundaries of AI?
right. I think there's you can get a small AI governance task force put together. And I think of it as a task force because you're going to do a rapid deployment very quickly, lay out some basic guidelines. And they're very intuitive. There are things like don't use data, you respect our data and privacy policies, use critical thinking when you're using these tools. Do not accept what comes out of them at face value. You have to have a human in the loop, meaning a human's going to look at something before you use it. The worst thing you could do is to take it and just immediately pop it into an email. Bad thing to do. Okay. And it's so easy to do that too. So again, there's a level of training around just not having a policy, not putting only the policy together, but also making sure that you're training people. And some people are like, oh, it's going to take me months to get it through my legal and risk and security teams. And I'm like, look, you can come into a middle place where you agree that certain things won't go past this area and everything else may be, there's a black and a white and there's some gray. And if there's gray, then you can go and check it. But as long as you're staying in this white area, you're fine. Definitely don't go into the black, but the gray, we're going to figure out the details later. So that buys you a bit of time. You can get started. And the reason to make that case is that until we actually use it, we won't know what rules we need.
I was just thinking that when imagining it, that, you're kind of building the steps as you're learning, really, aren't you? Once you've got some parameters, you're absolutely right. You won't know where the problems are, or even what are some of the questions until you actually start delving into it. It is so new.
Right. And I think of it as scaffolding. You want to provide scaffolding for people so we can build this beautiful structure. And you can't build high without that kind of support. So in the beginning, we're going to start pretty small. We're going to define the space that we can be in as pretty small. And within sales, there are so many things you can do right out immediately that do not tap into any proprietary data, don't look at customer data, improves the efficiency of sales, and get you out there and starting to use these tools in a really thoughtful way. And in a way that, again, as long as you keep a human in the loop and you treat it like a really good recent graduate who knows nothing about work, and they make tons of mistakes, so you have to look at everything that they do, treat it like that, and you're going to be in a pretty good space.
Now, some of the kind of really basic things that salespeople can begin with is, and you've mentioned this before, is, kind of like understanding your customer more deeply and better, doing that kind of research. But what about kind of mining customer feedback? Tell me more about that.
Again, it's one of the most valuable places you can go is to gather all the types of different feedback you have within an organization. And we're sitting on tons of it. Throw it into a file, give it to AI, and tell it, find me the 3 most common problems that customers have, and detail them and give a couple examples, direct quotes, and be very careful with your work. Don't make anything up. And you can just upload that file and it will literally give you the top 3 things. And you can even do some calculations to say, this is mentioned in 20% of the feedback. And then you can do more analysis, like what would be the one thing that we could do that would make it better? And it'll give you some recommendations. So it's, again, doing some of these things, it can then take that over to product, over to marketing, whoever the place is, into customer service with a potential solution. So it's, again, the same thing that you can just do with just market research that's out there. to gather through all of that customer feedback, the focus groups, and then find potential needs that you can put into your sales materials.
Love that. Love that. I mean, there's so much data within our often within silos that are not connected across the organization to get a 360 picture of the customer's preferences. How can AI kind of help to bring together all of that, the information that are sitting in silos?
Right. Again, I think it's a Herculean task to try to wrangle all of your data into a place. And that's what a lot of chief data officers are there for, is to like figure out where your data is, make it accessible, and make some sense of it. My belief, though, is that not all data is equal. Some data is much more valuable to you. And depending on what your business strategy, depending on what your sales strategy is, some data is going to be much more valuable to you than others. So be aware of which data is most important, and then also be aware of which data is in a really good shape that you can do something with. They may not be the same. And so while you're getting the really valuable data up to speed, you may want to experiment with the data that's already in pretty good shape that you can do things with. So you can get better at asking questions, learning how to manipulate it, get the responses that you need out of it, so that you can better tune that data for your future needs. So again, I agree with you. There's so much data in different places across your organization, which is why a strategy is so important. It tells you what data, and ideas and initiatives you want to pursue and which ones you're not going to, because you can't do everything.
This is true. This is true. So what if you were going as you do, speaking and supporting many companies and CEOs around the AI technology and data strategy, how do you get them to understand which data is important to them? What's most critical to them? Thinking about, revenue growth and customers. How do you start that process?
Yes, one of the biggest mistakes I see organizations doing is, let's find all the use cases for AI across the organization. Or even within sales, let's just make a huge list of all the use cases. I'm like, go ahead and do that, but that's not a strategy. Use cases are not a strategy. You already have a business strategy. You already have a sales strategy. Go look at that and saying, where is it falling short? Where are the gaps between where we want to be and where we actually are? And then ask this very crucial question: how can AI help us close those gaps? We're not talking about redoing your business strategy or your sales strategy. That may change in the future as you get new capabilities from AI. You may see new opportunities, but at this stage, how can AI help you accomplish your existing strategy? And that's a discussion I often have with the leadership in these organizations and they go, oh, we forgot about that. And it's so easy to forget because you're blinded by this bright, shiny light of AI. Like, what can we do with it? Many, many things. But what can we do with it to help our strategy succeed? That's a very, very different question.
Yeah.
And then we get down to the brass tacks. We go, what are those biggest gaps and how can AI help you close those gaps? It's typically we want to go and address new customer needs. We want to move into a new market. Well, how do we understand those needs better? We can use AI. How can we market to them better and communicate with them better? You can use AI. So it's AI in the purpose of us accomplishing our most important strategic goals.
Lovely. Wonderful. Okay, so you say the most precious asset is to have salespeople's asset is the salespeople's time and attention. What do you mean by that?
Well, you think about how much time a salesperson takes. For example, a client needs some documentation or some case studies. That information is buried somewhere deep in the bolts of the organization. Like, where is this? So salespeople are typically spending a third of their time on administrative tasks instead of spending time with customers, thinking about customers, relating to customers, communicating with them. They're doing administrative tasks. A third to a half of their time is spent doing that. And it drives them nuts. So if they can have access to all of that information much more easily. Instead of having to click through a bunch of links, can just say, here's my customer problem. Here's the presentation I'm putting together. Find me this information. How beautiful would that be? It would be amazing. Or I was working with a salesperson and I go, what's your big task right now? He goes, I've got this really important presentation I'm pulling together right now. And I go, well, why don't we just start from scratch, imagining you're using AI, ask it to write that presentation for you. So we uploaded their sales strategy, uploaded some information about it. He gave the AI some direction, and out it puts a 20-page presentation. I go, how does it look? He goes, this is pretty good. It would have saved me a lot of time, hours, if I had started with this and then modified it. So again, it's taking a lot of the things you already know how to do so well as a salesperson, and then using AI to see if you can do it faster, more efficiently, even better. And you become more effective at doing that. Reduce the amount of time on administrative things that allows you more time to think strategically on behalf of your customers.
I love this. There's so much fear around AI replacing jobs, but actually it's the jobs we don't really want to do anyway.
Yeah,
Isn't
the
that
way
a blessing?
it is. I mean, there are two things to note. People who are using AI, the research has found, for the most part, again, if they're using it as a tool to do their job better, they're liking their jobs more. They're finding more joy in their work. They're returning to the things that they love to do. The other thing I like to say, it's not AI that's going to take your job. It's someone using AI that's going to take your job. So
Yeah.
the sooner you learn how to use these tools, in the same way we had to learn how to use computers, some of us never used them before. We had to learn how to use email. We had to learn how to use Google. We had to learn how to use Slack and Teams. These are essential skills that we have to learn to do our work. And AI is one of those essential tools.
So I'm really interested in you, Charlene, multi-award winner, author. I mean, really, you're a bit of an overachiever. How on earth, did you study technology? Was that your route in? Tell me more about how you became this massive guru that you are.
I just like technology. I like gadgets. I've always loved them. Growing up, I had a father who would just get every gadget in the world and be just like, what is this thing? So I think I got my first Apple II computer when I was 2. I'm sorry, when I was 10.
I was going to
So
say too.
and so early on, we were fidgeting with these things. And I just thought it just enabled us to do so many things. So I'm driven by a sense of curiosity. And I'm also driven by my purpose, which is to catalyze transformation to maximize human potential. And I see technology, I see the optimistic side of it. Again, I see the pessimistic side, the not so good side too, but I see the ability of these technologies to make us better, to make our organizations, our communities, our society better. Now, there are significant downsides we have to guard against, but that doesn't mean that we can't use these tools to look at the better side of things, how we can better our lives. So I grew up as an Asian American woman in Detroit, Michigan. There were very few of us in that community, and I was the only person of color, even in my school. So I grew up feeling like a disruptor, of not fitting in. And so that gave me a perspective of I had to get comfortable being uncomfortable no matter where I was. And so now I feel like I look for disruption. I look for adventure every single day. I make it a practice to do things, to be out at that edge. And so when I work with leaders, I'm like, it's so nice to have a nice, safe place to return to. But on a daily basis, take yourself out to the edge of your comfort zone. Stay there, because that's where things look very different. It's where you will grow. You will find and discover things you've never seen before. So push yourself out to the edge and know that no matter what happens, whether you succeed or not, you're going to be okay. You're going to be fine.
You're so comforting with all of this. No wonder the CEOs love you, like enabling them to face their fears. But anyone that's kind of embracing technology and change, really. I love that. So who is your hero or shero, Charlene?
When I was growing up, it was Helen Keller, who was a young girl who very early in her youth, about 2 or 3 years old, she was struck with a fever and became blind and deaf. And so you can imagine just completely isolated. And she had an amazing tutor who brought her out of this. And she had an amazing command of language. It would tour around the United States speaking as somebody who was blind and deaf. She had her tutor assistant interpreting for her because it was hard to understand her. But so much grace, so much knowledge, so much wisdom coming from her. And I feel like, my goodness, if she could overcome that, if she could overcome that to really have an impact on people, I can do this. I can do this.
Can you remind us of I can't remember the period that she grew up in. What?
It was the early 1900s,
Not early
and she
1900s.
passed away, I believe, in the 1970s.
Yeah.
So again, she was alive when I was reading about her as
Mm.
my hero. And she went to college. She graduated from Radcliffe. And an extraordinary thing to do, period, as a woman during that time, but especially as somebody with significant physical limitations. So I just look at that and I see that maximizing of human potential, that her teacher, her parents saw that in her and gave her every opportunity to do that. And I just would wish that people would see all that kind of potential in somebody and look past any limitations they may have. Again, physical, emotional, mental, social, economical, education, and really look at people and say, what's the potential here? How do we maximize that? How do we use our relationships, use these technologies, use the structures of society and our organizations that we have to bring out the good in people?
I'm absolutely inspired by you, Charlene. What words of wisdom. And I can see that you are enabling others to maximize their potential now. So Helen Keller will be very proud of you. Thank you so much for being a guest on Scale Your Sales podcast and sharing your insights and being such an inspiration. Thank you,
Thank you
Charlene.
again for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Scale Your Sales podcast. If you like this discussion, feel free to listen to other episodes or watch the captioned show on YouTube and subscribe to future episodes. I would really appreciate it if you would leave a positive review on iTunes. Thank you.